Órale! Bienvenidos and welcome to the FamiliaFFB podcast. This is Jorge Martin and we are on YouTube, familia. Oh, please, por favor. We'd be so grateful if you gave us a like and subscribe. We're getting close to a milestone so that we can change our URL. So any subscription really helps. Also, we are a proud member of the Fantasy Points Media Group. Familia, some of the great fantasy minds out there. We got Scott Barrett's strength of schedule. You got Grant Barfield's pace and tendencies. You got John Hansen, the fantasy guru himself, his final points. I mean, they are in the middle of 32 days, 32 articles, 32 podcasts, all of this great content leading up to the training camp. And you know what? It's all there on fantasypoints.com. And when you go, put in the promo code Familia22. If you want to do it in Spanish, you do Familia22. You get 10% off. So again, just make sure you're getting in there and use that promo code. And Familia, we're going Carolina. We got a little Carolina on my mind. I do sweet Carolina, but people don't want to hear me sing, and plus it's not the right one. But Jeff Haseley, mi amigo, he has been my go-to guy for all things Carolina for since last year, since we got introduced by buen amigo Jay Felicio. So shout out to G-Men Jay, and I hope you took him down in that fantasy league where you guys had like apparently you had an incredible spread at a sports bar. So I hope that I hope you did that, Jay. Love you, man. And this is a guy who, I mean, I'm telling you, he wears so many hats. I mean, he's a senior writer for Football Guys. He's also a digital designer, video editor for Champions Round, Eagle Dan, ¿cómo estás? Fantasy Doctors, and 4 for 4. So, and he's also the host of the Carolina Fandom podcast, which I was a guest on the first night of the draft this past April. So and he gave me one of the great Mexican food takes last year that I am still daydreaming about, where he talked about putting Carolina pulled pork on nachos. I'm telling you, I almost bought a plane ticket to get out there, or I wish that we could freeze dry things in FedEx and send it over. So Jeff, mi amigo, bienvenido. Thank you for joining us.
Wow, what an introduction that is. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's my pleasure to come on here and of course talk Panthers and talk to you. And that's what people want to see. So thanks for having me on.
Well, this is great because, I love that I get to be the host, but I also just get to sit back and learn in these. This NFL Insider Series has been even better than last year. People have been coming back. People like yourself have been coming back and just filling me in with knowledge. I love that been able to do this during that lull before training camp. I think we're going to get through almost all of them before the end of training, before the training camp kicks off, and then hopefully all these predictions come through. But we're doing this. The dust is settled. The medicals have been cleared. Mm-hmm. Baker Mayfield, number one draft pick in the 2018 draft of the Cleveland Browns, is now a member of the Carolina Panthers. So much intrigue, so much talk. There's already been analysis about it. First off, did this kind of feel inevitable to you from the Carolina side? And secondly, kind of can you look in the crystal ball and see how this impacts the offense going into training camp?
Yeah, so I think that it was always kind of in the back of my mind that Carolina might do something to bring in a veteran quarterback to compete with Sam Darnold, to compete with rookie Matt Corral, who they drafted. So there was a thought that could possibly be the case. I mean, if Darnold was going to start this year, I mean, only Zach Wilson had a lower QB rating than him last year. So I think the writing's on the wall that his time in Carolina is, few and far between, I think, right? So they needed to make a move, and this is a move that they made that wasn't really that tough of a move to make. I mean, a conditional 5th round pick in 2024, it didn't really cost them that much at all. So yeah, I like the fact that they are taking the initiative to try to find that next franchise quarterback. I mean, we know, we know they released Cam Newton, right? We know they signed Teddy Bridgewater. They traded for Sam Darnold. They signed Newton again. They drafted Matt Corral. All of this within like the last 2.5, 3 years or so, and all of that costs picks, right? I get it, and it depends on who you ask in the Carolina community. I happen to be just kind of like an eternal optimist when it comes to this kind of thing. But there are people who are like, same thing, whatever. Let's see, get rid of the coach and then I'll talk, or whatever, right? That's their thing. But I look at it as this. I mean, if they didn't do anything, what are we thinking, right? I mean, they have to do something. If you don't have a franchise quarterback on your team in the NFL in this day and age, in any day and age, essentially, you try like heck to get one. And that's what they've been doing. They've just been failing at it. If the old saying, if you're going to fail fast, right? And then try again. That's exactly what they're doing. And the front office management is doing everything that they can to make this team better. They're making moves. They're improving the offense. They're improving the defense, doing what they can to find that quarterback. And I applaud them for doing it. Maybe they've made the wrong choices, right? I mean, and that kind of comes back a little bit on the coaching staff, but they're doing everything that they can to try and get out of this funk where they haven't been in the playoffs. 2017, I believe it was the last time. And other teams will probably there are other teams that would love to have the fact that they were in the playoffs in 2017. So, it's a work in progress. If you ask me what I think of the trade, I think it's an improvement. I mentioned that it cost picks for them, correct? Well, we've finished the 2022 draft. So the 2023 draft is coming up. Carolina still has a 1st, a 2nd, a 4th, a 5th, and a 7th pick in that draft. So, I mean, that's not so bad. I mean, if you think about all of the trades that they've made and all the trades also that they've brought in too, right? So I don't know. I mean, it didn't work out with the 3rd overall pick in 2018. Now they're going to try the 1st overall pick in 2018. How about that?
The thing that, having seen him at USC, I mean, this will be the last thing I talk about with Sam Darnold. I thought he was good. I thought there was some Brett Favre in there.
Mm-hmm. That's me too.
It definitely has not. I actually had him for a couple weeks on when he seemed to be. I think he was leading the league in rushing TDs after week 4. I had him for a couple of those weeks, and he actually helped me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just no progression, and and you were saying fail fast, and these guys. I wonder could this be the death knell for him, or is he going to be relegated to backup duty?
For Sam Darnold, it's possible they either release him and pay him his $19 million. That's most likely going to happen, or they keep him and they try to do whatever they can. Look, Baker Mayfield hasn't even looked at a playbook yet. He just recently passed the physical. So, I mean, it's like, hey, training camp's in a couple weeks. We want you to be our starting quarterback. You ready? You in for it? Even if he's like absolutely gung ho, he still has to knuckle down and study and learn. And guess who knows that stuff better than him right now? Sam Darnold. So it's possible that we could still see Sam Darnold in the preseason, and maybe he makes the roster. I mean, who knows? But I looked at some comparisons of Mayfield and Darnold because they were both in the same draft, right? Mm-hmm. And you look at completion percentage between the two. Baker, higher completion percentage, 61.6 to 59.8 for Sam Darnold. That's not great for both of them, but Baker gets the edge. Passing yards, Baker has 14,000 yards, whereas Sam Darnold has 10,000. That's a big difference.
That's right? A season. That's a good season. 4,000 yards.
Exactly. Now, I think Baker does have 10 games on him, though, in terms of games played. But still, yes. Touchdowns. Here's the kicker. Sam Darnold, 54 touchdowns. Yeah. Baker, 92 touchdowns. That's going to be big. And when you've got DJ Moore, a guy who has never had more than 4 touchdowns in a season, that sounds kind of appetizing a little bit. Quarterback rating, Baker 87.8, Sam Darnold 76.9. So that's a fairly decent difference, right? What else? Fourth quarter comebacks, Baker had 6, Sam Darnold 3. Game-winning drives, Baker 7, Sam 4. They've been sacked almost equally, 134 to 133. Here's the big one: is the interceptions. And I already mentioned 92 touchdowns to Darnold's 54. Well, Baker Mayfield has those 92 touchdowns, only 56 interceptions, whereas Darnold has 53 interceptions, but again, 54 touchdowns.
Wow,
so that touchdown to interception ratio, much more in favor of Baker Mayfield. So in comparison, there is no comparison, right? Now, the only thing that I'm kind of a little bit concerned, maybe not concerned about, but it's just in the back of my head. Cleveland had a very good offensive line. And Baker Mayfield kind of had a little bit of a down year last year, but he also hurt himself. He had a shoulder injury to his non-throwing shoulder, actually his left arm. And he was okay with a very good offensive line. Well, how is he going to do on Carolina, whose offensive line, although is improved, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit, but it's not in the same league as what Cleveland was. So what does that mean for Baker, right? So he was decent, okay, on a great offensive line. How is he going to be on a kind of an average offensive line that's starting to gain some cohesion, right? Because that's what they need. They need experience, that offensive line, and they got a new offensive line coach, James Campen, which is a name around the league that a lot of people love and respect. And I'm really curious to see how he impacts the offensive line, but. That's something that isn't really necessarily being talked about is, how Baker Mayfield can do behind this Panthers offensive line.
And we're going to talk about the line. I want to, he's definitely got a good deep ball, which I know people are talking about. Yeah, people are talking about, he's got an elite arm, great arm strength. You look at him as a possibility of unleashing someone like DJ Moore. I know I wanted to go position by position, but I feel like when you look at Mayfield, can we kind of talk about him and how, number one, how he could perform in this offense with Ben McAdoo as the OC, and starting with first Moore and then Robbie Anderson. We'll talk about Terrace Marshall kind of later.
So I think that when you bring Baker into the equation, 3 out of his 4 years that he's been in the league, he finished in the top 20 in terms of fantasy ranking. Last year, he was 25th. Again, not a great year. He only had 17 touchdowns compared to 27 to lead the all rookies in his rookie year, 22 the year after, 26 the year prior to last year, where he made the playoffs and advanced. He won a game in the playoffs. So, I mean, that alone should, if he can translate that to Carolina's offense, I think that's going to be by default an improvement or a spike in value for everyone who's on the team, right? So you got DJ Moore, you've got Christian McCaffrey. We already talked about Robbie Anderson, right? Terrace Marshall. So I think that we're going to see a slight uptick in production and value. From the Panthers wide receiver core. I see that. Now, tight end, he's not necessarily been a big tight end target kind of quarterback. Yeah. That could potentially change, but also Carolina, they don't really, the last couple of years, they haven't had a lot of receptions to tight ends. In fact, I think they're like bottom 5 over the last 3 in terms of total receptions to the tight end. So that's already sort of iffy. Tommy Tremble is someone from Notre Dame who's kind of coming along and is making his own impact. Great blocker that's going to keep him on the field. And he's got underrated hands. And he runs routes fairly well. And he's still young. So, I mean, he has the opportunity to do something there. I'm not looking at the tight end room as being like, kind of fantasy relevant. I don't see that. In fact, I really kind of only see DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey as the big fantasy targets and on this offense. And, maybe Robbie Anderson is kind of like that X factor, but I'm not sure about the consistency that's there. And Terrace Marshall, I mean, he's young. he was 21. He barely turned 21 years old last year, and he's actually younger than many of the wide receivers that are coming out as rookies this year. Still, so he just has some opportunity to learn, and I think we see that a lot, especially with younger wide receivers who kind of come in and they're like a deer in the headlights. I don't know what this is. I know how to run a route, but I'm not sure how to kind of plan my route or know what to expect in terms of breaking press coverage or knowing how to break my route and look back at the quarterback because there's a hot read that's coming my way, or knowing what specific schemes are that he has to understand, right? So there's a lot of I don't know, which is why you always hear in the around this time, training camp time, where players will say, "Oh, I am so more in focus this year. I know what's going on." It's kind of like their version of saying, "I didn't know anything last year." Oh boy, shoot,
So true.
right? I mean, we're blessed to have guys like Justin Jefferson, come on, or Jamar Chase, who happens to be LSU as well, who come on and they do really well offensively as a rookie. So, I mean, we're like, where's Terrace Marshall? When's he going to appear? So I don't know, but it's a case by case situation. So we shall see. But I do believe that Mayfield kind of gives a little bit of an uptick in production for the receiving core, the running back, everything. Plus, just because McCaffrey is on the field, it's going to make running that offense so much easier because teams are going to have to focus on him. I mean, if you've ever seen like these NFL matchup shows where they go in in detail, they're like, the linebacker needs to make sure that he's covering the running back. And then, there's a wide receiver who's open on a slant route. And it just depends on, how the offensive coordinator kind of plans his offense. When you have that player like in McCaffrey, man, the opportunity is there for you to do all kinds of things. Heck, we saw Sam Darnold start 3-0 with McCaffrey in the lineup, and they get J.C. Horn back too. We'll talk about defense too in a bit, but he's a big piece that I think could really kind of come in handy and help the defensive line out. So yeah, I think Mayfield is a welcomed addition, even though some fans are probably, there's some fair weather fans in Carolina. There just is. They want Matt Rule out, and they're adamant about that. And they're not necessarily going to see the bright side of things. They'll see the dark side of things. And I'm not like that. I'm not like that fan. I'm like, hey, if you try to make a move to improve the team, I'm all for it. Why wouldn't you not be, right? So, we'll see what happens.
And that's the thing. I mean, you talk about people are talking about that, moving on, and those are the same people who probably forget the fact that Bill Belichick got fired from Cleveland because he did not have a franchise quarterback. So, it's one of those things, and he's considered the greatest football coach of all time. Bill Belichick isn't necessarily walking in the door. It's the guys on the field, and I'm intrigued by Baker because I think the guy who was there in 2020 is still in there. He's still young, and there's the narrative of he's got a chip on his shoulder. They've got Cleveland the first game of the season, so it's just great, whatever. It'll this is not Tom Brady going back to New England last year. When you gave such a great breakdown. I mean, I know there's so much. There's a lot. I want one player I want to talk about. One receiver I want to talk about is DJ Moore, and you said he's one of the holy trinity of players that are going to be most fantasy viable on this team.
Mm-hmm.
What could Baker do to further him as make him be a more valuable player? Because I'll give you an example. One of my leagues, in fact, the league that I ended up somehow winning, I picked DJ Moore right after Cooper Kupp went.
Oh, wow.
So,
okay. So you're on board, huh? You're invested.
I am invested. It was the way the order went. It was Woods, Kupp, and then DJ Moore. I got Deebo Samuel three rounds later that really rode me to the championship. But More. I'm a fan of him as a player, and obviously the narrative is 4 touchdowns every year in his career. How does Baker impact him?
I think Moore is a better route runner than people give him credit for, but Mayfield is not only is he like a gritty quarterback who you kind of alluded to a little bit, but he's able to do some of these rollout plays that we weren't necessarily seeing from other Panthers quarterbacks. Maybe not even, going back to Cam Newton, right? Maybe Teddy Bridgewater, but that wasn't really his strength. Baker Mayfield, although he's not really a rushing quarterback, he gets out to the side. He does a lot of rollouts, and he does fairly well with those. I think we could see him really start to develop a rapport with Moore. I mean, look at last year. Although this is mostly without McCaffrey, but Moore had 163 targets. Next closest was Robbie Anderson with 110. Right, so that's a big jump, a big margin. So I think that Moore is going to kind of be that same person in the offense, the top target. We're expected to see that. Mayfield, you mentioned before, has a little bit stronger of an arm and those deep throws and a little bit more accuracy. I think we could see that. We already saw that with his 92 touchdowns. We're going to see some of these long balls. And if you remember back when Odell Beckham was on the Browns, I mean, before he got hurt, there were some plays that he made really well with Baker. And I kind of see DJ Moore into that role. Maybe hopefully for once, he can eclipse that 4 touchdown mark. He kind of needs to. I mean, he does everything else that he needs to do to be an elite receiver in the league, except catch those touchdowns. That's the only thing he's lacking. It's the only thing he's lacking. If he can get that, then your investment in him in that league that you mentioned, I think is going to pay off. But he's got to reach that 6-7 touchdowns, I think, in order for that to happen. Because if he can get 95 catches, something around those lines, I mean, that's kind of where you want him to be.
Yeah, I'd take my chances with him getting close to 10 targets a game. Just absolutely take my chances with him.
Well, I mean, he had it last year on a per game basis, right? 163. Well, no, 17 games. So almost like 9.7 targets a game.
That's still close. To me, that's as close to 10 as we're going to get. And he was one of the target leaders. So I buried the lead a little bit because of so much intrigue about Baker Mayfield. But this team goes with CMC, Christian McCaffrey, the jersey that you are wearing right now. The 2018, 2019 seasons were fantastic. Some of the best running backs. His 2020 season, his 2019 season was one of the great running back seasons of all time. It's been injury plagued, but to me, two things that have really struck me about this. Number one, he didn't have to have surgery either of the last 2 seasons. And number two, Dr. Edwin Porras, who is one of the people who I trust and respect as much as anyone in this space, said, "What if he's this year's Austin Eckler?" Because he was a depressed asset going into the season last year. So I don't know if we see 400 touches for him this year, but could he still be an RB1 getting 200 to 250 carries and then being the force that he is in the air?
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely 100% agree that McCaffrey is going to be a difference maker if he's healthy, if he's on the field. That's just who he is. That's how he operates. No one is more upset about his and I don't want to say it's his fault. I don't think it is, right? It's just injuries happen, especially some of these soft tissue injuries, right? Maybe you can tie this into the fact that he's just a workout warrior, and at his size, at his frame, maybe he was trying to do a little bit too much for what his body can handle. And then, in that case, muscles strain. That's exactly what he had, a strain or a pull, or however you want to look at it. And like you said, Eckler, the season prior to last year, so I guess the 2020 season, Eckler had that hamstring injury. He was out for a long time. And McCaffrey wouldn't have been out that long had he not tried to come back too soon from that initial hamstring injury from week 3. He tried to come back a little bit too soon, and he damaged it further. And whenever you do that, on your hamstring, it's always worse the second time around because it wasn't fully healed. And when Carolina was pretty much out of it, out of the division, out of the playoff hunt, out of the race. They're like, let's put an end to the season here for McCaffrey. Why risk it? And we hate to see that because that happened the year prior too. So if he's healthy, he is going to be a difference maker on offense, on the team, in the win column. I firmly believe that. And if anyone can do it, shoot, it's him. McCaffrey is shown what he can do with limited talent at quarterback. We're talking about Kyle Allen, right? Teddy Bridgewater, a little bit of Sam Darnold here, right? Not much. Shoot, not much. A Cam Newton that was on his last arm.
Right.
So, yeah. And if you can insert the same with DJ Moore. If Moore was able to do what he's done, 3 straight 1,200 yards from scrimmage seasons that no other receiver has done in the last 3 years, with the quarterbacks that I just mentioned, shoot, man. There's reason to be optimistic. Everyone is thinking that their team has a chance. Carolina is not necessarily a playoff hopeful, I don't think, right now, but anything can happen. When they won 15 games in 2015, that was the same year that Kelvin Benjamin came off a strong season. I think he had 10 touchdowns as a rookie.
Mm-hmm.
And he tore his ACL in a training camp practice with the Dolphins. And everyone thought, oh, the season is over. Who the heck do we have? We have Philly Brown as a receiver. We've got Jericho Cotchery as a receiver. We've got Ted Ginn, who catches balls 50% of the time as a receiver. What are we going to do? And then they turn around and they win 15 games and make it to the Super Bowl and play one of the best defensive games in Super Bowl history, but they couldn't do it against the Peyton Manning Broncos.
Exactly.
Whatever. Sounds like I've got a little bit of sour grapes there a little bit, but McCaffrey, as I said before, he's a difference maker for the entire offense. If he's on the field, things just defenses have to accommodate for him. And there will be times when he's the star. There will be times when he's the decoy. We've seen that. I'm really looking forward to seeing how he's used in Ben McAdoo's offense and how that might change, as well as how McAdoo uses Baker Mayfield. So there's a little bit of uncertainty there, but there's a reason why they hired him. He was good with the Giants when in the Eli Manning era. I think, I'd have to look back at the numbers, but I believe they had like 10 wins, 11 wins, something like that. And then when Eli got hurt, that's when they dropped off and had like 2 or 3 wins. And it was like, okay, that's it for him. And the Giants were moving on. But I think he's one of those guys that's better as a coordinator than as a head coach. Right. And we're going to see that. I think we'll be reminded of that this year.
Okay, you hinted at the offensive line, which, you know what? I think anybody who's worth their salt. I always love to talk about the O-line because it's so important to fantasy football. Added Ekwonu with the number 6 pick in the draft. Also added a guard later in the draft. This is a unit that needed a lot of help. I think after quarterback, this was the most the unit that needed the most help. Have they done enough to get this group to be at least passable? This is a group that Pro Football Focus just ranked them number 24 in their going into the 2022 season. What is this group going to be able to do enough?
So excellent question. 24 is actually not a bad ranking that I've seen for them. They had 13 different offensive line combinations last year. 13. And they added 3 new pieces to the offensive line. You mentioned Ike Ekwonu, left tackle. Bradley Bozeman, the center from Baltimore that they signed. Again, good, solid center. And the center is kind of like the coach of the line. He's the one who not tells everyone what to do, but kind of manages that line. And I think we've seen that with Baltimore. Heck, they have had a lot of success running the ball. And Bozeman, I think, is a big part of that. They signed Austin Corbett from the Rams as a free agent signing. And keep in mind, Corbett was with the Browns in 2018 with rookie Baker Mayfield. Yeah. So he already has that rapport with him a little bit. And they're arguably their best their best tackle or their best person on the offensive line prior to this season and Icky being drafted was Taylor Moton. So, I mean, in my opinion, it's a big improvement to the offensive line, and people, media outlets, and reporters from other teams aren't necessarily seeing that. They're just like, Panthers offensive line sucks. I'm going to say that, and here's the this year maybe they'll do something with Iquanu, whatever. So, three great pieces, in my opinion, that I think can be a valuable asset to that offensive line improving. What we like to see with offensive lines is cohesion, right? Is experiences and being able to understand how they, they're almost like a puzzle where they have to know exactly what the other person's doing. They have to know the schemes. They have to know the plays. And how many times have we seen offensive linemen on the Panthers who kind of struggle to get that blitz pickup, or struggled, not even a blitz, just a regular pickup from a strong defensive end who's trying to, get around that edge. We've seen that. I think Iquanu is going to help out tremendously in that area. Bozeman could be a nice anchor, and Corbett is a veteran who has been in the league. What is he? I think he's 34, 35 years old. So, I mean, he's been in the league for a while. Yeah, it's
and he was really good. I will attest, he was really good with the Rams.
Mm-hmm.
So that O-line was elite when he was here.
Right. So, I mean, there's optimism there on the offensive line. They made their moves to improve that area of the field, just like other areas of the field, other positions. But as far as the offensive line is concerned, I think it's a big step above where they were last year. But in the rankings, not yet. They got to get that experience. They got to get that cohesion. Maybe that happens faster than expected. They got that new offensive line coach, James Campen, in town that they personally went after and signed. You got to love that. You absolutely cannot say a bad thing about what the Panthers front office is doing, trying to do, and is showing that they have the interest in doing that. Heck, remember the was it CJ Henderson? They brought him in. They traded for him. Also, Stephon Gilmore. I mean, they're making moves. They don't have They don't have Gilmore anymore, but they're making moves, and you got to applaud them for that.
So let's go to the defensive side of the ball. I remember last year you were optimistic about that group. They had some good games. Did it seem though that they kind of ran out of gas because the offense was not as the offense kept putting them on the field and they got worn out. Mm-hmm. How did they kind of shape up? I asked this question: how did they shape up against the run, and how did they shape up against the pass? And I asked this almost like a DFS type of question because to how our Familia community can kind of attack defenses, or maybe have that be the deciding factor in sitting a guy and starting someone else.
Well, they were second overall in total yards allowed last year next to Buffalo, which a lot of people are like, what? Seriously? They were? Yes. Especially against the pass. They were very good against the pass, and I think a lot of that had to do with Brian Burns on one side and Hassan Reddick on the other, and those were two really good edge rushers who made an impact. And they didn't have J.C. Horn after week 3 because he got hurt. He sprained his foot against the Texans on a Thursday night game, the same game that McCaffrey got hurt. So getting back J.C. Horn, I think, is going to be a big step in getting that defense a little bit more shored up for sure. They re-signed Dante Jackson at the other end, the other corner. They signed Xavier Woods to be free safety, along with, of course, Jeremy Chin. So I mean, their safety room, I think, is strong. I like that. They added some smaller pieces. Matt Ioannidis, they got him. Linebacker, they added Damian Wilson as well as Corey Littleton. Okay pieces. In my opinion, Shaq Thompson's the main guy there on defense as far as the linebackers are concerned. Derek Brown in the middle, who's kind of coming into his own to kind of, plug up those holes. Itur Gross-Matos, I think this is his 3rd year in the league now. It's time for him to take a step forward, especially with Hassan Reddick being out and now with Philadelphia. Someone's going to have to be that, kind of pick up the slack in the sack department. he's an example of somebody, as well as Marquise Haynes. And a draft pick that they made, Amari Barno. I think he was a 6th round pick. Amari Barno is kind of like a sleeper type of edge rusher who had one of the fastest times in the combine of any defensive player, let alone a defensive line. Or sorry, any defensive lineman, let alone a guy on the edge. So he's someone to watch. Yeah, I mean, there's optimism there. I do think though that they might take a step back. Losing Hassan Reddick's going to hurt unless they have that someone who can fill in, whether that's Gross Matos or if it's Haynes or Barno, as I mentioned. Or if they have the ability to sign maybe one more type of player. I think they were looking at like bringing Jadeveon Clowney in because he's from the area. That didn't happen. So maybe they target somebody else. But I kind of see them as middle of the road, if not a little bit lower in terms of their defense compared to last year. But I mean, I could be wrong with J.C. Horn comes in and he's like the next, Patrick Surtain, which he was his draft mate. It's possible that Carolina can kind of keep take over where they left off last year. But I'm a little bit less optimistic about the defense because losing Hassan Reddick, that's a big piece.
Yeah, that is a big piece. Oh, mi amigo. I mean, you knocked it out of the park. This breakdown was absolutely fantastic. I so appreciate it. I'm still, like I said, I'm still salivating over that nachos description that you gave to me last year. I had one fun one. Any new discoveries recently? And then I want to take a minute to talk baseball.
Okay. Food discoveries, you mean?
Yes.
Oh man, I don't know. There's a whole bunch of different places around Charlotte that I haven't even really been to, but I've heard about. And I'm like, oh, I gotta get there. If you are ever in town, let me know because we will go to Duckworth's. We will get that barbecue nacho plate. It is absolutely phenomenal. And if for whatever reason Duckworth's just is closed for renovations, I have other places too where we can go. There's definitely a place for food. I am a big foodie, as you can kind of tell about my body shape here. But yeah, absolutely. There's I could always talk food. I could do a food podcast.
Oh, love it. Well, you put on your Twitter bio has Met fan. How are you feeling? We're right about the 50%, the halfway point of the season, getting close to the All-Star break.
So I think the Mets I think they might be a couple players short on offense as far as like their bats are concerned. I think that they might need a player or two that they can sign or trade for before the trade deadline here at the end of the month. It's possible, maybe to just kind of give them a little bit of a boost. But their pitching staff is starting to come around, and with Jacob deGrom most likely coming back probably after the All-Star break, I think that's kind of when we'll see him. With Max Scherzer, with Trevor Williams had a great pitching night last night. I mean, they've got the arms to be dangerous, and in the playoffs, you kind of need that 4-man rotation, maybe 5, if you can do it. And their bullpen, maybe that they also add an arm in their bullpen. That's possible, but as a fan growing up in New York, the Mets were part of the cable network that I watched. So I was able to watch them. So I became a fan, moved to the Carolinas. And I'm still a fan. I've always been really a fan of the Mets, and I try to cheer for them. You might think, well, if you're from New York, you're either a Mets or a Yankees fan. That's most likely true. I just happen to be on the Mets side of things. So yeah, I'm kind of hoping for them to kind of turn it on a little bit, but they're a tough team in that NL East, man. They're coming up. Yeah. It's kind of like, you're looking back at the standings and you're looking at the games behind, and it's like 7 games behind. Or no, I think they were 10 games up on them at one point. 10.
Yep.
I think that's when Scherzer got hurt. 10, and then next thing you know, it's 7. Atlanta goes on like a 14-game winning streak.
Yeah,
and
they didn't lose
somehow,
for 2 weeks.
somehow the Mets still had like a 4 or 5 game edge on them. Now it's down to what, like 2.5, 3 games, something like that. I mean, it's going to come down to those head-to-head matchups for sure. And if they can get good if they can get good at bats and good run production with Scherzer and DeGrom on the mound, man, I think it's a possibility. And in the playoffs, you got to have strong pitching. The Mets have that. Well, probably more than any other team in the National League. The Dodgers have strong pitching. The Cardinals, yeah, okay. The Braves have strong pitching. Heck, even the Marlins sort of have strong pitching, but they don't have the other pieces, right? So, I don't know. As a fan, I just kind of have to enjoy, hope, and watch everything all unfold.
Well, I do say that the Mets are the pitching staff is getting healthy at right about the right time, getting Scherzer back, and then DeGrom, even if he's back think about it. July is the month of the trade acquisitions. It's almost like they're in first place and they've just added two frontline starters and didn't have to give up any prospects to do it. And you still got Pete Alonso hitting like an MVP. So I said it when Scherzer became Met. I really wanted him to stay with the Dodgers, but when he became a Met, I said that is the scariest team in the NL. So those two guys in a short series are almost it's almost unstoppable. Unstoppable. Well, unfortunately, we got to stop this podcast because I gotta let you get to Duckworth's and send me a picture of something yummy. But
I will send you a picture of anything yummy. Now that I know that you're such a foodie like me, so yeah, be on the lookout for food that I'm eating that I'm thinking you probably would like. You just got to get yourself here to the Carolinas.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm gonna put your the little bio information, but anything you want to plug that's coming up, in this month leading up to training camp.
Well, we've got the Scott Fish Bowl that's coming up here soon. Yay. That is beginning next week.
Yeah.
I will be on. I am thankful and blessed to be on the Podathon. My time is this Sunday, the 10th, at 7:00 in the morning. I think they're doing like 36 hours on this one. Of course, it's all for a great cause, going to Fantasy Cares and Toys for Tots. And Scott Fish does an incredible job of running that, as well as Ryan McDowell, too. The Scott Fish Bowl is my favorite league that I participate in every year. If you're familiar with it, they use the Superflex structure, which has also some wrinkles in terms of scoring. And I have been in the league 9 years with Scott Fish Bowl, so I am really looking forward to having another crack at it. I mean, there's thousands of people in this tournament, so to be able to finish in like the farthest I've ever gone is the semifinals. So if I made it to that, I would have gone to the final 12 and would have gone to the absolute, whoever scores the most this week wins. This year, though, they're changing it up with their playoff structure to kind of do an average of your entire regular season score from like the playoffs start week 11. So week 1 through 10, your average score that you have will be added to your week 11 score. And the bottom 10%, like 50% of the entire group makes the playoffs. So half of them make the playoffs, right? So everyone's pretty much in. Almost, well, not everyone, half. The bottom 10% after week 11 are gone, right? And then so it's almost like people are.
So it's like Survivor.
It's almost kind of like Survivor, yeah. So it's an interesting type of concept. Now, week 12 is okay. It's your average plus what you get in week 12. And then it's your average plus what you get in week 13. So gone is the whole thing of not you need to worry about, oh my God, if I don't score well in week 12, I can't advance to week 13 or what have you, right? So you're not just anchored to 1 week to be your determining factor of whether or not you advance, which is nice. I kind of like that. So I don't know if you participated in that or at all, but it's a fun league. And I'm blessed to be a part of it and talking about it in the Podathon that's coming up on Sunday.
I did play last year. I just missed the playoffs by a game. My team got on a hot streak at the end of the season, but and I'm in one of the live drafts in Los Angeles. So
okay, good.
So nobody knows their draft order. It's kind of like
oh wow.
I was telling somebody, or Jeff Bell, I'm sure I
Mhm.
know you know Jeff. He and I were texting back and forth, and I just said I'm taking the best ball strategy, where it's like, okay, you're pick number 4, figure it out. So so we'll see. But you're right. Scott is just he's he's almost like a guardian angel for those kids. I mean, the things that have been the money that's been raised, it's all been for such a good cause. And I think everybody loves to play in this, knowing they're paying money. They're not getting any winnings out of it, and I don't want any winnings. I want this all to go to the kids. I love the competition, and I love that I'm going to meet a lot of analysts that have that I've interacted with in via Twitter, and now we're going to be competing against them in a room, talking trash and sipping a beer, and then toasting afterwards. So looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to close this out. Familia, eso es todo for our show. Again, when you're going to fantasypoints.com, make sure to put in that promo code Familia22, Familia 22 in Spanish, get 10% off. And again, make sure to go. You got my Twitter account, Jorge Martin 17. I push all content out there. I'm going to be pushing articles. I'm going to be re-promoting all of these great NFL insiders, just different times with little clips. And I'll be dropping some information, because this is the time. We're here to help you win. This is the time. Let's get ready. Do your homework. Watch these NFL Insider videos. Go to the YouTube page. Make sure you're giving us a like and subscribe, and go down that catalog, because it's these people are coming in to help you win your leagues. So muchas gracias for joining us, and remember, todos somos familia. Salud.